NC State is 2-0 after a big 35-31 win over Virginia at Carter Finley Stadium on Saturday. Hi everyone, Noah Fleischman here, the host of the Wolfpacker show, breaking down everything NC State athletics. And today we're focused on the football win over Virginia. Big non-conference victory for the Pack. After taking down East Carolina last Thursday, they came back with a big win over the Cavaliers after trailing by 10 at the half. We'll dive into everything today on today's show. We'll also touch on some Olympic sports as well. But when you look at football's win over the Cavaliers, a big time performance. UVA scored 24 points in the first half, NC State just 14, but they were able to rally in the third quarter, 21-7, outscoring Virginia in that period. And then both teams scoreless in the fourth. NC State gained 416 yards in offense. Virginia, though, 514 yards, but it was kind of more of a bend and not break kind of game for DJ Elliott's unit. Obviously, doesn't want to give up 250 yards, 257 passing yards, and 257 rushing yards, but they kept the Hoos off the board in the second half, which is the most important thing when they're trying to win a football game. CJ Bailey was impressive, 16 of 23 for 200 yards and a touchdown, and Hollywood Smothers did Hollywood Smothers things. 140 yards on the ground, two touchdowns. CJ Bailey added two on the ground as well. When you look at this win, I was just most impressed by the response from both sides of the football. First half was not going their way. Virginia jumped out to that quick lead. NC State kind of went back and forth, 14-7 after the first quarter. Both teams scored on their first two possessions. And then NC State's offense kind of stalled out, back-to-back three and outs, and halftime were their next three drives, while Virginia kept it rolling, a field goal and a touchdown. There was a punt mixed in there too, but of Virginia's first five drives of the game, they scored on four of them, three touchdowns and a field goal. And of those drives, three of them went for more than 10 plays, and they took up at least 4 minutes off the clock each time. So Virginia was able to roll early, but NC State went into the locker room looking to change it. Why? Virginia was 10 of 13 on third down in the first half. NC State couldn't get off the field. It was that simple. Virginia was able to keep it moving. Of those 10 third down conversions, five of them came with 7 yards or more to gain. So those are the kind of plays NC State wants to clean up. Because NC State defensive coordinator DJ Elliott had said earlier in the week, a good defense wins on third and long at least 70% of the time. Well, NC State didn't win on third and long in the first half really at all. They won three of them, and that was it. When at the half, though, it was interesting. After the game, we talked to some players. Caden Fordham and Sean Brown were the ones doing the talking on the defensive side of the ball. They wanted to clean that up. They obviously knew can't win the game if the other team keeps scoring. They cleaned up. Captains did their thing. NC State held Virginia to 3 of 6 on third down in the second half, enough to get the win. Offensively, meanwhile, after halftime, NC State came out, scored three straight touchdowns to keep it rolling. NC State was all over the field in the third quarter, doing that with ease. When you look at those three touchdowns, came off of a Hollywood Smothers 14-yard rushing touchdown, a CJ Bailey 12-yard rushing touchdown, and a Hollywood Smothers 9-yard rushing touchdown. Doing it on the ground in the second half was the key to the game. Speaking of Hollywood Smothers, he finished with 140 yards of offense on the ground. 115 of those came after halftime on 12 carries. 12 carries. That's the Hollywood Smothers everybody has been looking to see this year. Even Dave Dorn said after the game, he's like, that's the guy that we expected to see. He showed up, showed out, a lot better running, didn't have to dance around guys in the backfield. You know why? Offensive line showed up. The offensive line showed up. That was the biggest gripe that people had after game one was can they block for running? And in the first game, it was hard. Hollywood basically had to avoid multiple tacklers in the backfield every play. This time, not so much. They opened the line, opened up some holes. Jalen Grant looked much improved at center. Jacarius Peak and Anthony Carter on the left side of the line looked great. The right side of the line, still a work in progress. Teague Anderson had his better game than week one. He did not have any penalties to report after having that unnecessary roughness penalty in week one. Right guard, though, is still a revolving door. NC State trying to find the right combination there. They've played multiple guys at right guard. Kamen Smith earned a start in week one. He also got to play there in week two. Spike Souls worked his way in a little bit in week one, and he played a little bit on the offensive line in week two. But it was Yusuf Muragabel, the transfer from Colorado. He was also at Florida. He earned his first career start, played 40 snaps, played pretty well for the most part. Obviously, he got beat here and there. First career start, playing a career high in snaps. it's going to happen. But he provided some good spark for the offensive line. So I think that'll be interesting to watch moving forward, the kind of combination they really want to roll with after this game. But overall, offensive line looked good. Defensive line wasn't as impactful as it was against East Carolina. Virginia invested a lot of money in their offensive line this offseason. Not a surprise there, and it paid off. But NC State's D line was able to penetrate at times. Sebastian Harsh and Kean Sloan finished with 3 quarterback pressures each. Kean Sloan again closed the game out with an interception in the end zone to seal the deal there. His first career pick. He can't remember the last time he had an interception. Probably back in high school. I don't even know if he had. I gotta double check, but it's been a while at least. He thought he had one in junior college, but when I looked, didn't see it on there. So NC State able to win 35-31 over Virginia. A non-conference game does not count toward the ACC standings, although NC State would have liked to be a 1-0 in ACC play, but they can do that this week against Wake Forest. We'll talk about all of that later in the week on our preview episode, joined by Connor O'Neill of On 3. But before we go to break, I want to give you 3 numbers to know from the win. You can look at the wolfpacker.com. That's why I work. That's why I write. I have 8 stories on the website today from last night's win, or yesterday afternoon's win. There's also like 4 or 5 stories from post game yesterday, too. So we have the most content of any person in the market about the win and what it means moving forward. But 3 numbers to know. Number one is number one. And why? That's as many penalties the Wolfpack committed against UVA. That was a big focus for NC State, which had 7 penalties for 63 yards against East Carolina, including back-to-back false starts to open the third. It was not a pretty game. Dave Doran stressed this week that that was a big emphasis, and it paid off. The offense was penalty-free. The only penalty was a face mask penalty on a tackle by Ronnie Royal. Unlucky there, but you know what? NC State was able to keep itself ahead of the chains by not beating itself on offense. That's what it did a lot of against East Carolina. Another number to know is 8. Hollywood Smothers, one of the most impactful players on the offense, and there's a reason. He forced 8 missed tackles. That's what he does. 6 of them as a ball carrier, 2 more as a receiver. He's one of the more elusive players in the ACC, and that's just going to continue to rack up. We'll keep an eye on how many missed tackles forced he finishes at the end of this year. Hit 34 last season. I think he's well on his way to breaking that. And finally, 15. That's how many missed tackles NC State's defense had. That's a place they need to clean up. They only had 4 missed tackles in week 1. Looked pretty good tackling team against East Carolina, but not against Virginia. Jamari Taylor, Virginia's running back, was able to break off a couple big runs, including a 66-yard touchdown, some broken tackles along the way. Sean Brown led the way with 4 missed tackles. Jackson Vick and Ronnie Royal had 2 each. So expect NC State to work on tackling going into Wake Forest. Linebackers and defensive backs have some work to do there. Otherwise, it was a pretty solid game for NC State. I'll give you one more bonus number because I thought this one was impressive. C.J. Bailey finished with a ESPN QBR of 90. You know, that sounds pretty good, right? Well, it's his second highest mark of his career. He had a 98.4, almost perfect against Stanford last fall. But to put that in perspective, this weekend, he had the 10th best mark by any FBS quarterback. And it was the second highest for any quarterback against a power conference opponent, otherwise known as he was dealing. Put that in perspective, 75 and up is considered excellent or Pro Bowl caliber if you look at the NFL. Average is 50, and anything under 25 is called subpar. So those are your numbers to know from the win over Virginia. NC State looked really, really good in the second half, not so much in the first half, but the response, I think, is the biggest thing to focus on here. They're gritty. They won a one-possession game. Something NC State didn't do a lot of last year. 2-4 in one-possession games a year ago after games came down to a score. NC State was on the wrong side of it more than it wanted to be, and it has cleaned it up so far. 2 wins, 2 one-possession wins for the Wolfpack. I've got a story on that on the wolfpacker.com. Go give it a read because it has a little anecdote from my conversation with Dave Doran over the summer where he really stressed how important it was to win one-possession games. Before we dive into the second half of the show, giving out game balls, looking around the other parts of NC State, got a quick word from our friends at Roback. There's only one way to describe Roback. It's best fit, best feel. For those who aren't familiar with the company, they're completely changing the game with their comfortable active wear. As you can see, I've got the Roback long sleeve on today. It's really comfortable. It's really versatile. You can wear it on a hot day. You're not that hot. It's actually pretty chilly out today. It's 73 and cloudy, and it's just as fine. It keeps you warm as well. If you also want to check out Roback, they've got a bunch of licensed game day collection. It's a lot of people's favorites. Polo designs, a clean hoodie, quarter zip. NC State had its own collection, along with a lot of other schools. So if you've got friends and family you need to shop for, go check out Roback and use our code NCS20. That's NCS20 to save 20% off your entire purchase. New customers only on Roback.com. They've got everything you need. I've got a ton of hoodies from there. They're comfortable. They're good. Let me know what you buy. Just tag us. Either talk to us on the board. Let me know on social media. If you use our code, what you got. So before we get out of here, let's just give out 3 game balls from this win because it was a good win for NC State. I don't know people. I will say people on social media aren't as critical of NC State as they were last week. They cleaned some things up. Won a shootout against Virginia. Scored 35, which is above the 31 number that Dave Dord has targeted for this offense this year. First game ball I want to give out is Hollywood Smothers. We talked about his elusiveness. Forced tackles, missed forced tackles left and right. Finished with 140 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns, added 13 more as a receiver. He was electric, career high in yards gained. He was the first running back since Reggie Gillespie to have more than 130 rushing yards and 2 scores on the ground. That came in 2018. So it's been a while since NC State had a running back doing that good. Let me know down below. Do you think Hollywood Smothers can reach 1,000 yards this year? Let me know. Let me know down below. He had just over 70 in the opener, now at 140 in game 2. He's on pace. Can he keep it up, though? That's the question. So Hollywood Smothers, the former transfer from Oklahoma. Game ball number 1. Game ball number 2. Going to CJ Bailey. This man's looking confident as always. He even said after the game, this is the best he feels playing college football. These 2 games into the year, both have been electrifying. 16 to 23 passing, as I said earlier, 200 yards, a touchdown in the air. He added 2 more touchdowns on the ground, really using his legs. After the game, Hollywood Smothers kind of called him the baby giraffe just because he's 6'6" and runs really, funny sometimes. But he looked elusive, looked like a gazelle on the field more than a giraffe. 44 yards on the ground, a long of 30 yards, which he punched into the end zone. He, after the game, was kind of talking about, he wants to be able to use his legs as a weapon more. Dave Dorn likes it too because he said it puts more pressure on opposing defenses, having to think about, oh, he might run. You can't drop too many people in coverage. And if they load the box, he can go right over the top and hit a deep ball downfield to one of all of these electric receivers that NC State has. 7 different guys caught a ball against Virginia. Justin Jolie led the way with 4 receptions. Terrell Anderson led the way in yards with 44. Noah Rogers had the receiving score. My last game ball, we're going to go on the defensive side of the ball. And I think I gave him one last week, but the way he's playing, he deserves another one. And that's Keenan Sloan. 4 tackles, 1 solo stop, and a pick. He also had 3 quarterback pressures against Virginia quarterback Chandler Morris. He played well. He's been all over the field. During the ESPN broadcast, ESPN analyst Sam Acho, he equated Keenan Sloan to an X-Man. The exact quote said, he's everywhere, right? He's an X-Man. He's Nightcrawler. Everywhere you want a player to be, he's going to be there. I think that's a good description of what he's done these first 2 weeks at NC State, wearing the Wolfpack red and white. Keenan Sloan has been an electrifying player at defensive end. Transfer from Utah State. Does not look like he's missed a beat in moving up a level. So he had the pick, first career pick, ended the game in the end zone, took the touchback, and then NC State took a couple of knees and got out of there with the win. The Wolfpack will play Wake Forest on Thursday night in Winston-Salem, a place that NC State hasn't done too well in recent history, but Jake Dickert, first-year coach in with the Demon Deacons, who are 2-0, but struggled in week 1 with Kennesaw State and won 10-9. So we'll talk a lot more about what the Demon Deacons present later this week. That'll be out on Tuesday afternoon. Rounding out the show, guys, let's just talk about some of the other sports going on in Raleigh. NC State men's soccer, number 5 in the country. It went to a scoreless draw with Carolina on Friday night. The Wolfpack remain unbeaten, 3-0-1. They host Stetson Wednesday night in Raleigh. Volleyball, the other team I want to mention, they're 4-1 this season through the first 5 matches. They split at Kansas State, Nevada in Manhattan, Kansas this past week. Kansas State edged them, but they came back and took down the Wolfpack. 2 words, Wolfpack against Nevada. Volleyball back in action Wednesday night, hosting South Carolina in what's called the Showdown at the Net, kind of like an ACC-SEC challenge that we're seeing in men's and women's basketball. That'll be available on the ACC network at 6 p.m. Pack also back in action against Cleveland State and Coastal Carolina this weekend at Reynolds Coliseum. So a busy week of Olympic sports on campus coming up and a busy week for NC State football. A chance to go 3-0 and do it on the road against one of your in-state opponents. NC State, by the way, they're not going to leave the state of North Carolina until week 7 when they play at Notre Dame. They got also have a road trip to Duke coming up in a couple weeks. So that's our first, post-game show. We're gonna get better at these, I know. Might be a little choppy here and there. It's hard talking by yourself, but you know what? We've got guests coming. We've got Connor O'Neill, as I said, from the On3 Network. He covers both Wake Forest and Duke, so he'll be on the podcast a lot in the next 2 weeks. And then we'll keep going from there. We're rocking and rolling with the punches. If you have any feedback, let me know down below. You can find us at thewolfpacker.com, part of the On3 Network. Subscribe right now. It's $1. Join, get all of our coverage from the postgame. Get all the coverage from every website in the network and every national writer. Andy Staples, Ari Wasserman, Chris Lowe, all of the amazing recruiting reporters that we have around the country. Chad Simmons in Georgia, Steve Wilfong in the Midwest, Adam Gorney on the West Coast. There's a lot of options. We'll talk more recruiting in probably next episode. And we'll go to fast forward to 2027. Football recruiting. NC State's got its sights set on some high-name players who were in the building this past weekend. I'm going to have more intel on them as the week progresses. Appreciate you guys listening. If you're on the audio platforms, if you're on YouTube, thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe down below. We've got more coming later this week. We'll see you Tuesday previewing Wake Forest.